Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council members. Jay Baxter, the city's finance director, here to provide an update to the annual, or here to provide for the review of the city's investment policy. Tonight, I will be providing a brief background on the policy in this process, and then it will provide an update on the Finance and Investment Committee's actions to date, as well as the review of the investment policy, and then finally the delegation of authority to complete investment transactions, which must occur annually. So just a real brief background, the city's investment policy was originally adopted in 2007. It calls for it to be reviewed annually by no later than the second meeting in September. The policy itself is derived from California Government Code, section 53600. It is very restrictive in what the city can invest in. The policy itself can be more restrictive, but not less. And I just want to take a second to also point out that I think it's important to say that when we talk about investing, we're not talking investing about stocks or equities or anything like that. We're talking about what the city can invest in, and that is strictly investment grade bonds or debt. So the Finance and Investment Committee was established October 15th, 2024, and is responsible for reviewing and making recommendations on financial matters. And then based on community feedback, the FIC conducted a comprehensive review of the city's investment policy as its first undertaking. The committee has met multiple times in the past 8 months and has done a deep dive on the investment policy. Things that were looked at were incorporating additional socially responsible investing practices, or SRI. SRI is an investment strategy that aims to generate financial returns while excluding certain companies or industries that conflict with specific values. The committee also explored environmental social governance, or ESG standards. This is a tool that grades and looks at a portfolio and identify risks and opportunities that may not be captured through traditional finance analysis alone. And this is something that on the three main is the environmental, social, and governance. Each company is given a score, and then a report is generated where companies within a sector are compared to each other to see how they compare on a bigger scale. And then also as part of the analysis, the committee looked at the Boycott, Divest, Sanctions, or BDS, and American Friends Service Committee, AFSC movement, and the related actions that other agencies took. There were two in particular that were kind of conducting reviews of their policies in context of world affairs at the same time as the city. Ultimately, both of those were Hayward and Richmond. So the committee looked to see kind of what actions they took. And in the end, both of those cities wound up focusing not necessarily on one side or the other, but kind of on the global picture, which is the approach that the FIC, or the Finance and Investment Committee, took, which we'll discuss further in a moment. So based on all the information that was presented, the FIC directed staff to, and it's very important to point out that the FIC specifically stated that investment should reflect the city's mission, vision, and values of the city, and not on any other organization or movement. Second, the committee directed staff to engage Chandler Asset Management to provide an ESG report annually. Both the kind of the review of the mission, vision, and values and the ESG report would be reviewed by the committee annually as part of the portfolio review and then the policy review. Additionally, the committee identified 3 business sectors to add to the policy's prohibited investment list, which I will touch on in a second. And then as well as just a cleanup item to relocate existing prohibitions all to the same area, to the dedicated section of the policy, just for clarity. So the review of the investment itself, the proposed changes are for Section 11. that prohibited investments in practice and instruments is the section, but added language stating city investments will be guided by the city's mission, vision, and values. That the portfolio will be reviewed annually based on that criteria, and that as kind of the year goes on, if there are any other prohibited investments that need to be updated, that it will be updated kind of as we go along. As previously mentioned, there are 3 new business sectors listed as prohibitions to invest in, and these include companies that develop or manufacture commodities that facilitate violence or war, engage in border or mass surveillance industries, and are involved in mass incarceration or detention. The city also added clarification language that the city's investment management consultant will use an industry standard classification system. This is done through Bank of America classifications, and this is to identify business sectors to ensure consistency in evaluating potential exclusions. It's just a kind of fancy way of saying that it's if you look up a company like Apple, it's a technology company. If you look up another company, it's how they define the sector their business performs in, and this is a standard used by investment firms like Chandler. And then previously mentioned, for clarity and consistency, moved the 3 previous business sectors from the investment risk to the prohibited investment practices. That's just for clarity purposes, to move all prohibited SRI prohibitions to the same area. And as previously mentioned, the policy calls for the delegation of authority, that the City Council delegate the authority to invest funds for 1 year to the treasurer, which is the finance director, and the deputy treasurer, which is the city manager. That is in the resolution and needs to be renewed annually, part of this annual review. And then staff's recommendation is to adopt the resolution approving the annual review of the statement of investment policy and delegation of authority to complete investment transactions. And we are open for any questions. And we also have Bill Dennehy from Chandler Asset Management online.
Thank you for the presentation, Jay. I'll open it up to questions for council members. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Hi, Jay. I do have a few questions.
Sure.
I noted on the comment about the classification system, which I fully understand. The example you gave, Apple, was somewhat of a very siloed example. What about in the case of a conglomerate? How do you classify what they are? For example, Coke Industries, right? What would we classify them as?
I would kind of default to Bill. That's the kind of the advantage of using a system like that, because they've kind of thought all of that out.
Please, if you tell us what that looks like or how.
Good evening. This is Bill Dennehy. When you say Coke Industries, do you mean Coca-Cola, or do you mean like the Coke family?
The Coke
I'm not
family.
sure what. Excuse me?
The Coke family.
So they don't have any bonds that are in our investment grade universe, so it isn't something that we would evaluate. But in regards to larger conglomerate companies, I'll use an example like Honeywell. They are classified in the capital goods sector, and then further delineated with additional subsector recommendations. But that would be how we would look at that. And another example would be, General Electric, although they have slimmed down their business operations, they also profiled in the industrial capital equipment sector based on the predominance of what their businesses are engaged in.
Okay, thank you. Then I have one more question, Jay, if I may. It's more on process. The page 3 of the investment policy, it's clause 7, actually, and it talks about internal controls. Could you just share with us what those controls are? How do they come into effect? How do we make sure that there's a balance?
So just big picture in terms of internal controls, anytime we send, so we'll just start with when we send money. Anytime we send money, we have a kind of a bifurcation system where whoever identifies and submits a request, somebody else is always reviewing it, and then a third party is always calling it in. So anytime we send money to Chandler, one of our accountant staff will identify excess funds that is available for investing. They will send it to me for review. I will call into Chandler to verify that, to let them know that, hey, this money's coming. Then we'll have the accountant initiate the wire. Then we have a third person approve the wire. So there's always multiple parties looking at it at the same time. So in terms of like sending money to camp, which is kind of is the other account we send money to a lot. There's notifications as well. So anytime we send money to camp or camp comes to us, there's a list of people that get that email, including the city manager. So not only do we have kind of a bifurcation of duties on the finance side, anytime we take any transaction, it is also notified for the city manager to make sure that they're aware that the money is either coming to us or going to them. And then there's also 24 hours that if the money isn't there, they automatically notify us. So we are on top of that. And then we also have the reconciliation process, which we take each source document for everywhere we send money to, and it's reconciled against each other. So including like our bank, we reconcile against Chandler, and that is done by accounting staff. It is given to our senior accountant, and then our auditors actually review that too. So there's lots of layers. It's a lot of money, and it's something we take very, very serious.
Certainly, thank you for that. So if I were to summarize it in just a few words, there are multiple eyes in the process of selecting what we invest in, and in the process of transmission of the money, which you duly just explained to us. So completely. No one person acts as investment czar, investment master, if you will, but rather this is a collective effort.
Yes, and we use Chandler Asset Management. In the past, we as city staff did the investing, which would be another set to make sure we're investing what we're supposed to. But with Chandler, highly reputable fiduciary. And just one other thing to point out, that Chandler doesn't actually control the investment. We actually have a third-party safe custodial bank too. So we have that, layer too. So
one more layer.
Okay.
Thanks,
like layers of finance, yes.
No questions.
Thank you. I appreciate. I just have a couple of small questions. If I'm understanding this correctly, for ESG, that is a comparison within sectors, and each firm like Chandler has their own formula that they use to give an ESG score, correct?
So there are three main companies. It's S&P, Morningstar. Chandler subscribes to a third-party software, S&P, who has their proprietary system, who does all of the grading. So they don't. Chandler itself doesn't. They subscribe to.
Okay.
And I forget who the third one is.
So they give a score that might be different if they were using a different.
Yes.
Okay. For the industry classifications, is that 100% standardized across firms, fiduciary firms, or is that, again, they've chosen to use this company's classifications?
I believe it's the latter, but I will let Bill.
Sure. So there's two primary. Good evening, everyone. There's two primary ways that we see different organizations classify companies. Some people use the Bloomberg classifications, and others use the ICE, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch indices. We gravitate towards the ICE, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch indices because that is the performance benchmark, or the indices that the portfolio is compared to for relative performance. So we think it's best to keep those comparisons apples to apples. And for us, that makes the most sense. But this will vary depending on who the investment manager is, but it's generally one of those two classifications, either the underlying index or the Bloomberg indices.
Okay. But nobody that is within our control, nobody at the City of Dublin, nobody at Chandler is making those determinations as to what a company's classification is, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Those were my questions for right now. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Two quick questions for you. You mentioned ATF, so alcohol, tobacco, firearms, as well as oil and gas companies are excluded from our current investment policy. Does that go back to 2007, or is it a different date when those were excluded?
I think we looked at that. That's been in place in our policy since last year, but in practice all along. Because Chandler, and maybe Bill can speak about this, Chandler has their own policy in place that excludes those things. So, Bill, is that correct?
So we do have an underlying policy in place for our state and local government clients where we have specifically excluded investing in alcohol, tobacco, and firearm entities. In general, it's, a lot of these companies don't even meet the requirements of California government code. But nonetheless, this is a policy that we've had in place in my entire almost 15-year career at Chandler Asset Management. There was an earlier time where we did invest in energy companies, if you will, and the two companies that met the requirements of California government code from both a domicile standpoint and a credit rating standpoint were ExxonMobil and Chevron. I can tell you that we have not held either of those names in the portfolio for several years, and will not hold those going forward. But there was a point in time when those were likely held, before 2015, if you will.
Perfect. And then based on the community feedback in previous meetings, there were 4 things that came up: ESG, SRI, BDS, and then the AFSC. Sounds like the first 2 of those, the ESG and SRI, are being addressed between the 3 groups. Military, the surveillance, and the detention centers. Could you, as well as the IQ score that you were mentioning, could you speak to why the BDS, AFSC were not included as part of this?
Yeah, in the conversations, with the committee, that we felt that they are everything that's going on, very heated topics with a lot of emotion on both sides, that we thought it was better fitting to align not with one group or the other, but align with and you'll hear me say it a lot, the mission, vision, and values of Dublin, to kind of judge whether an investment is kind of not worthy, but is something that fits what we're trying to accomplish with the mission, vision, and values, instead of
aligned with the city.
Aligned with the city, yeah.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Okay, perfect. We will move on to public comment. How many speakers do we have, Marcia?
Vice Mayor, we right now have 23 speakers.
You want to invite the first speakers or first set of speakers?
Yes, we're going to start with our speakers here in the chamber.
And just before you speak, I would like to ask the audience to refrain from any cheering or jeering after or during the speakers. If you agree with what a speaker has to say, please feel free to raise your hand. And we ask that if a speaker says what you intended to say, raise your hand in support and either make a different comment or pull your speaker slip in trying to make this meeting efficient. Thank you. Please.
My name is Catherine Doyen. I am a lifelong Tri-Valley resident. I actually remember when Dublin Boulevard was weeds and deer. I don't know if y'all are aware, but today the UN Commission of Inquiry made an announcement today. Its conclusion was that the state of Israel is committing genocide. So, and I quote, because it is clear that there is an intent to destroy the Palestinians in Gaza through acts that meet the criteria set forth in the Genocide Convention. What does this have to do with Dublin? So currently, Dublin is funding companies involved in perpetuating this genocide, like Caterpillar. If you don't understand or know anything about Palestinians' asks for folks to boycott and divest, and the BDS sanctioning Israel, a good site to check out is www.bdsmovement.net. So currently the city of Dublin is helping to fund this ethnic cleansing that's happening. And in case you're not aware, I think it's really honorable that the city of Dublin wants to base their policies based on their own mission and values. I looked those up. I think you have equity, inclusivity, environmental sustainability, transparency, and finance, innovation. Those are all great values. As someone who operates my own business in the Tri-Valley and I frequent many Dublin businesses, I'm really glad to see these values. I want to encourage the city of Dublin to see how important investing ethically is and how much of a need there is for the BDS movement in this political area that is Dublin. It should go without saying that genocide is not really held within these values, but I feel that it's still important to say. I really want to encourage you all to vote to add language to your statement of investment policy to explicitly include investments connected to genocide, apartheid, illegal military occupations, ethnic cleansing, things like that. I grew up supporting Israel, but what they're doing is indefensible. And I really hope that more folks can come to see the reality of this, just because people are dying, their homes are getting bulldozed. Trees that are native to the area are being displaced, killed, and then replanted with non-native trees. Like there's a genocide, there's an ecocide. There are many layers to this that we're not really taught about at all in school or on the news. Unfortunately, Dublin is currently funding this with their contract with Caterpillar, but I just, again, hope that you all can lean into the value of the value that you have of innovation and add this language to your policy that just explicitly includes.
Thank you.
Okay, you're so welcome. Thank you.
Our next.
Good evening. My name is Riyad Sood, and I'm a proud Dublin resident of 5 years. I am the Senior Immigrants' Rights Advocate at the Council on American Islamic Relations, also known as CARE, San Francisco chapter. I stand before you today to urge our city to divest from companies like Caterpillar, whose machinery is used in the ongoing genocide in Gaza. Our city's investments should reflect our values of justice, human rights, and the protection of innocent lives, not the destruction of them. Caterpillar bulldozers are being weaponized and used to demolish Palestinian homes, schools, and entire neighborhoods. These machines aren't just tools of construction, they've become tools of oppression. By investing in Caterpillar, we are indirectly supporting actions that contribute to civilian suffering and human rights violations, and ultimately the genocide of an entire unarmed nation. Divestment is not a radical act. It is a moral act, just as cities and universities once divested from companies complicit in apartheid in South Africa, we now face the same choices today. Our money can either fuel injustice abroad, or it can be redirected towards projects that strengthen our Dublin community here. When we divest, we send a clear message. Our city will not profit from war crimes. Our city will not stand silent while companies enable the destruction of families and entire communities. Our city will stand on the side of peace, dignity, and human rights. I ask you today, let us be bold, let us be principled, and let us act. For justice in Gaza and for integrity here at home, we must divest. Thank you.
Hello, Honorable Mayor and Council members. I hope you are all doing well tonight. My name is Musa with the San Francisco Bay Area Office of CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, and I am also a longtime Tri-Valley resident. I want to begin by addressing the Finance and Investment Committee staff report. The report states that the city does not recommend aligning the city's investment policy with the platform of any specific advocacy group. We believe that particular framing treats divestment from companies profiting off of war crimes as if it were a narrow or fringe demand. This is not about privileging a specific advocacy group. Would you call climate justice advocates merely an advocacy group? Would you call residents asking for anti-discrimination practices a special interest? In the same way, divestment from companies complicit in genocide, apartheid, surveillance, and detention is a common sense demand for many Dublin residents that should not be marginalized or silenced. The committee's notes refer to the challenges of BDS guidelines, citing AB 2844 as though that legislation legislation prevents this council from taking action, but AB 2844 is a political scarecrow. It has been used to intimidate California cities into silence, but it does not actually prevent cities from adopting or updating their own investment policies. These apparent challenges are a sandcastle built on intimidation, not real barriers to divestment. To allow that to dictate your decisions is to allow fear to win. Meanwhile, Dublin continues to hold millions in Caterpillar bonds. Like some before me have said, Caterpillar bulldozers are being used to weaponize, to demolish Palestinian homes, schools, and neighborhoods, all to enforce a brutal occupation. Passing ESG screens does not resolve this issue. In fact, it shows the limits of ESG guidelines. Procedure without accountability, while companies that profit from occupation stay in the city's portfolio. BDS is not the threat here. The real threat is allowing manufactured fear and political pressure to outweigh your responsibility to Dublin residents. Dublin should not hide behind procedure or behind ghosts in a staff report. You have the power and the responsibility to put real moral guidelines into this city's investment policy. Please act with courage and meaningfully divest from companies profiting off of genocide and war crimes. This isn't political, it's common sense. Thank you.
Good evening. Members of the council, vice mayor, mayor's not here tonight. My name is Arman Rizvi. I live in Dublin and I'm a senior at Dublin High School. I've attended Dublin High School for my entire 4 years of high school. I want to thank the city council and city staff for their continued efforts over the last year, listening to the community, and we know that you've worked very hard on this and we appreciate your efforts on that. We are here today to urge you to follow the lead of other Bay Area cities like Richmond and Hayward and the County of Alameda in aligning our city's values with our investment policies and divesting from companies supporting and complicit in Israel's genocide. And we are glad to see that the language there's language included that specifically removes companies supporting war and weapons and such. Many of my classmates and peers at Dublin High School have been affected, and they tell me that they have family or friends who are currently suffering in a genocide, or they feel scared, or they've been discriminated against, or they've been bullied because of their beliefs. And many residents, many community members here in Dublin tell me that they are losing faith in their city leaders for their continued support of genocide. And I don't think the council wants that. I think the council wants our community to be a safe and welcoming place. And so that's why I urge you, please listen to the residents, to the constituents, to the community, restore trust in our government, and align our city's investments with our values by adopting an investment plan in line with BDS guidelines and divesting from companies supporting Israel's genocide, in particular, removing Caterpillar from the city's investment pool, as was done by the county. Thank you.
Thank you very much, City Council, for considering this resolution and for inviting us to give our comments. Right now, this is a time when all of us adults in this room have to take the responsibility of being adults, which is to have courage in a moral situation. In a time when people are being starved systematically and forced to flee and then bombed while they are fleeing, being apolitical and staying out of politics means accepting that. And that means putting down our responsibility as adults to do the right thing in the face of something atrocious. If we choose to do nothing and be apolitical and let things go as they have been, then we are giving our money to bulldoze people's houses and let them be bombed. And I don't think anyone in this room really likes starving people. I don't think any of you don't care about people being starved and bombed. I know that you all have a heart, and I know that everyone in this community has a heart. So this is a time for courage, and this resolution and this policy review is a really inspiring act of courage that will require difficult conversations between community members, but it is one in which we will all reclaim and work towards sitting with our real humanity. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Sophia Rahman. I live in Dublin with my husband and our 2 children who we are raising in a Muslim-Jewish interfaith household. My children attend Kahila Synagogue in Piedmont. We are deeply grateful that you are considering this resolution for an ethical policy of investment. For the last 2 years, we've been in so much pain watching things that are done in our children's name towards people we also share a relationship with. Both sides of my family and my husband's family are survivors of genocide. I see the trauma in my dad every day. I never got to meet my grandfather, who was a lawyer, who was arrested and tortured to death for his pro-democracy movement that he helped lead in Bangladesh. And my husband lost almost all members of their family remaining in Hungary to the Auschwitz concentration camp. The images that we see from Gaza break our hearts endlessly. When I take my children to school at Amador, all I can think is of the children who don't have parents anymore, who are under the rubble, who can't read the evacuation notices that are being dropped down on them. And I only just found out about this council meeting today, but I want to really implore you to adopt it and go further. We know genocide doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens through steps like apartheid, like what is happening in the West Bank and Gaza. And I first learned about Israel-Palestine about 20 years ago in my 20s when I saw a documentary about a young woman named Rachel Corrie, who was bulldozed by a Caterpillar bulldozer because she was trying to stop a Palestinian family's home from being bulldozed. Last year, I will never forget watching a video of people standing outside the hospital in Gaza and their bodies being bulldozed while they were still alive. Caterpillar, like many other companies, do many, many things. But if they are complicit in war crimes and violence, I think it is incumbent upon any city not to benefit from the destruction and total annihilation of another city and its inhabitants. So I beg you to please adopt this resolution and to go further. Thank you so much.
Good evening, respected council members. My name is Kathy Faraja, and for the past 25 years, I've had the privilege to live in the comfort and security of the Bay Area. Yet on the international stage for decades, we have seen the brutal effects of the occupation on the Palestinian people living in the West Bank. The military checkpoints, the military law reserved only for Palestinians, while so-called settlers enjoy the civil laws afforded them, the random detainments, the collective punishments, the apartheid, the dispossession of livelihoods, homes, and lives. To add to this heinous mix, the people of Gaza have suffered a relentless, ruthless siege for the past 17 years. More recently, we are clearly seeing that the people of Gaza are being systematically slaughtered. It's intentional, it's overt, and it's a crime. I am here today to urge you to think beyond the lens of financial returns, to consider our shared humanness, and to keep in mind that those having the wherewithal to act on the highest level are incumbent to do so. Thank you.
Since we've talked at a couple of securities we've looked at, and CAT's one of them, and we've talked about that, what is our current position right now in CAT, and what was it 6 months ago?
Good evening. Our current position in CAT is less than 1% of the total portfolio. I don't have the data in front of me to tell you what it was as of December 31st, but I'd be happy to get that for you.
Okay, I appreciate that. I just want to get an idea of what direction we've been going in with that particular security. It seems like, and you can elaborate, that we've taken a view at the portfolio over the last 6 months, and we've actually reduced or eliminated our positions in some of those more controversial companies as a result of maturity or whatever, and we haven't reinvested. Is that correct, Bill?
That is correct. We have not reinvested in some of the names that have been flagged during these council meetings. So I can assure you that our par size has not increased in any of those names. But I'll just say it just has not increased in any of those names.
Okay, and this question is for Jay. Just for clarification, I'm not going to put you on the spot because I already know the answer. It's been brought up by a lot of folks here tonight and over the last 6 months or so. Even when I was mayor, we were talking about all this. That cities actually divested in those securities. But there's a difference between our portfolios and their portfolios. They never divested directly. They don't invest directly in those companies. They invest in portfolios, and they switched portfolios. We talked about Richmond and Hayward. So I would encourage people to get those facts straight. There were no losses taken in any of that. A side point for clarification, not the essence of what they're talking about, but to be very clear, nobody was altruistic. They took into consideration what was done. But the reason I'm bringing this up is we've talked about this. I want to make sure that we understand that. And Jay, do you have any insight when you talk to those cities about what they did?
It is my understanding that the city of Richmond does not invest in individual securities.
Yeah, and the same with Hayward.
That I'm not sure, but I know for a fact that because Richmond just invests in the local pools, right. And those are third-party money managers who the policy doesn't affect what third-party money managers do.
Okay. So I just wanted that as a clarification point. We have an unusual situation where we're making prudent investments directly in securities. So it's not the same thing. And the decisions are a lot more impactful to us. So I just wanted to bring that up just to make sure that we're in the same room on this one. Okay, I don't have any other clarification questions.
Thank you. I have a question for our attorney, Mr. Bacher. We had several speakers who indicated that they felt that this policy that is the staff recommendation opens us up to legal risk, that we could be, as a city, and at least one speaker, threat's not the right word, but felt that it opened individual council members as well up to legal risk, that if the city invested in companies that individuals didn't feel aligned with this policy, that opens us up to lawsuits. What's your take on that?
Well, I did review a number of emails we received today indicating that the policy change or policy changes like this might violate various provisions of the Constitution or statutory provisions. I've reviewed those. I'm not aware of any potential violations that would arise for you're deciding how to use your own money. I don't think there are any significant restrictions on your ability to do that. I'm not aware of any reason why the council members would be personally liable for the city's investment decisions. So I mean, while I can't say you won't be sued, because anybody can file a lawsuit, I'm not particularly worried about legal risk, and you certainly shouldn't worry about personal risk because the city would pick up any liability that arose out of your conduct at the dais or as a council member.
Thank you. Going further on that, the some of the speakers seem to feel that that a policy such as this that is crafted to be neutral is being done under the pretext of subterfuge, I believe was one of the words. Wolf in sheep's clothing was another. There's a number of residents that are concerned that the policy that looks neutral isn't really neutral and would give folks who have an agenda the opportunity to direct us to divest in specific companies under the auspices of a policy that looks neutral. The policy that we have before us does not allow even council members to say this company, not that company. Is that true?
Yes, that's how I understand the policy. Maybe Jay and Bill can further comment on that. But ultimately, the decisions are going to be made by the portfolio manager based on the policy. And no one is going to be directing the investment managers other than the policy. So that a third party can't do that. The policy drives the decision making of the investment manager.
Thank you. And I wanted to ask one final question because it came up in public comment that one speaker was quite concerned that the classifications was possibly biased and urged us to use the B of A classification system for companies. And I want to ask one more time, that is what we're referring to, right? That is how industries would be classified. So, for example, somebody couldn't come in and decide, well, they feel that this company perpetuates war. They couldn't come and say, I think that company perpetuates war, therefore it doesn't fall into your investment policy and you must divest from that, correct?
Correct. Chandler uses the B of A, and that was a topic of conversation at the FIC and why we felt it was important to add that to the policy, that there was a standard classification in the policy that kind of dictates like what the final say is, for lack of a better word.
Okay.
In classifications.
Thank you. That was the extent of the questions that came up for me during public comment.
Murata.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. First of all, let me thank all of you in the audience who came out and presented and shared your thoughts. The outpouring of your feedback is certainly weighs on all of us. So I'm going to ask one question, one that I think is fair and equitable for everybody in the audience tonight, which is, Jay, what benefit do we get if we pass this tonight? And what benefit do we get if we don't pass this tonight?
In terms of reach,
the resolution.
If it's passed today, it will not affect our portfolio as it currently stands. Is that what you're? Yeah. We would not. There are no. Calling. Are you gonna?
I think you're on the right track. Go ahead, Jay.
Okay.
Keep going, Jay.
Yeah. Thank you. No, there are no companies that under the new prohibitions that we would need to. The policy actually says that if a policy becomes ineligible, we would hold it to maturity. It would actually be a conversation between staff and Chandler. The policy actually says that. So even if they were to become ineligible, we wouldn't necessarily have to divest or sell. But with that said, that there would be no investments would become ineligible. It is very restrictive, and that's state law of what we can invest in.
Which notably is bonds and debt. Right.
Yes, it's investment grade bonds, which are basically treasuries and what we'd consider like blue chip corporation debt.
Okay. Thank you, Jay.
There, I actually have one more.
Sure, please.
Easy question, Bill. On the B of A index and those classification codes, how closely are they aligned to the SIC codes?
They are fairly closely aligned, but there are some like small subtle differences between the different indices. One that just jumps out to me is REITs are classified as industrials in one sector, and in another index, it's classified in the financial sector, but they're still considered REITs. But in general, they are pretty closely aligned. There's some small differences. I'd have to do some research to find you like some very specific granular examples. So there's really not many.
And for clarification, SIC, Standard Industrial Code, that is a long-time categorization, industry categorization that's used pretty much everywhere. So one more question related to that. If we were to apply an SIC view on this, or would there be any difference in what we're doing today and how we're categorizing various securities?
There would be some small differences. I would have to do some research on those codes and how those sync up specifically to the Bank of America ICE Merrill Lynch indices that we scrutinize very closely when we determine our sector allocations across all of our portfolios at Chandler Asset Management.
I appreciate that, because I'm obviously very interested in how it would apply to the areas that we're talking about today, and in general as well. But my understanding is this is very closely aligned to SIC codes. And so I just wanted to make sure I understood that. But thank you for your confirmation. That's it.
One question. I think Councilmember Murata may have been going in this direction, but if we don't adopt this resolution today, we're sort of out of our own policy, because in our policy, we're supposed to adopt this resolution in the second meeting of September, if I understand correctly.
Correct. And it's an annual look at this policy. And it does require in the policy that it be done by the second meeting of September.
Thank you. I want to echo Councilmember Murata's thanks to our public speakers. We heard there's so much passion surrounding every aspect of the Israel-Palestine conflict. This is not about that. Our investment policy is really not about global politics. I want to thank again everybody who spoke today, because I know that, as one speaker early on said, this policy is a Rorschach test, and everybody sees something in it. Everybody sees their life in it. I don't believe that that's our intention for our own Dublin investment policy to be a statement on global politics. I really want to thank everybody for being, everybody that was in the chamber, for speaking civilly, for speaking passionately, for advocating for your position on what Dublin does with our investments. I also want to thank Vice Mayor Caudry and Councilmember McCorston for the hours that they spent on our investment policy and looking at the ways we can align this policy with our own vision, mission, and values, and make sure that the way we invest the citizens of Dublin's money aligns with the vision and the values that we passed a while ago, that we spent time crafting and making sure that our investment policy matches our vision and our values. And that being said, we just heard the answer that there's nothing, that the policy that's recommended to us tonight does not immediately cause us to take any immediate action on any of the holdings that we have. That even if we had a holding that did not, that fell out because we were adding 3 new categories, we wouldn't immediately sell it tomorrow. That we would hold it to maturity, and at that point we would sell it so that we are not costing the citizens of Dublin money, costing the city of Dublin money, and that we certainly going forward would not be buying securities and bonds, bonds or debt that don't align with our own vision. And so again, I want to thank you guys for the hard work that you put in. I want to thank staff for the hard and considered work and the research that you did on this issue. And I'm happy to support the recommendation from the 2 of you on our committee. Thank you.
Have anything?
No, I thank you, Councilmember Josie. I truly appreciate all of the speakers and supporters that came out this evening. Public engagement in government is important, and I personally value that, and I'm sure the council appreciates everyone taking time out of their busy schedules to be here on something that's clearly important to the community. Also, the thousands of emails that we received, appreciate those. I have not had a chance to go through each and every one. I'll get there. But Yeah, just thank you all for being here, and thank you to the staff for putting this together and guiding us along. Anyone want to make a motion?
We're at that discussion level, or
Sure. Do you have something to discuss, or
no? Or comments. Yeah, I was trying to be clear and direct about the clarification questions, but I have not had the opportunity. I might seem very focused and rather myopic, but we heard the community. We heard all sides. We let people speak. We brought that information in, and as our council has noticed, we see something in everything. It's not perfect. A lot of hard work has been put in this. We are a society that should be against violence. The implications are a general statement about things that I think everybody in this room should be in agreement with, regardless of what's going on at the national level, the geopolitical events, state level, and everything else. There are some ideals here that we're trying to get across. So I would also be remiss if I didn't thank the community and the speakers for their input. But I just want to make it very clear that we've spent an awful lot of time trying to do the best we can to stay out of those events, but acknowledge that they do exist, but not overvalue them, and to be very clear about what we're doing for the citizens of Dublin. We have our personal views on things, and those we need to separate. Okay, we hear the passion. We have those same issues and concerns and discussions when we go home, but we try to keep this focused and do the best we can with your tax dollars and your resources, which this is what they are. So I, again, thank all of you. And I think we've done a very good job at putting this together. And I do want to also thank staff and everybody else involved in those rather intense meetings. So I'm good with what we have. It's a push to do something better. It's progressive in the good sense, right? And we're moving a step closer every time. And there will be tweaks in the future probably too. So just wanted to make sure that I touch those points to the community.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any comments? Motion?
No, I would expect that it would be appropriate for the two of you as the investment committee to make the motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt it as is.
I will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you.